Hello everybody, John here, and today on To The Garage we're carrying on with the badge saga, and we've already got a plaster mould. We've got two actually, and we're going to be trying out replicating the badge, and our first attempt is going to be using something called Fimo. Which any of you crafters out there, I guess that's the right thing. Fimo might be quite familiar to you, less so to me, and we're going to see what we can do with this stuff. Okay, so I've got two plaster moulds. This is the one that's already had some abuse, which you may or may not have seen in the previous video. So I'm not risking too much, and I've got this stuff, Fimo Professional, and this is a clay that basically you can form in your hands, you can mould with it, you can sculpt with it, and you bake it in your domestic oven for about half an hour, I believe, at 110 degrees C. So this is going to be our first proper experiment at replicating the badge. I should be storing this, the remainder of it, in an airtight container after we've played. This is going to snap in two quite easily, so I definitely think just one will do us. That's probably quite excessive. So how would I estimate this? Well, if it was 1/3 as thick, I think I'd need two of them, so I need about 2/3 of that. So let's see if I can snap a bit off. See what the consistency's like first. Probably taking off a little bit too much, but it does kind of snap at this stage. Next thing to do is to knead it. At the moment it's quite crumbly, quite, I don't know if you'd call it coarse, but I'm not a weak individual, that's quite tough going. It's about 14 degrees C in the garage today. So as I'm getting a little bit of movement into it, it is softening a little, leaving a bit of stain on my fingers. Just keep working this and trying to get it to soften up to a point where it's going to be really easy to push into the mould. While I'm thinking about it, I'm just going to pull a piece off, roll it into a little pea, and see what it does to the surface of my plaster. This is plaster of Paris. Yeah, and as anticipated, it's not going to stick to that, so that's excellent news. Plaster of Paris is quite, I think the right word is friable. The surface is always a little loose, so in effect the mould is permanently talcum powdered almost, so it's kind of its own release agent. Right, I reckon I've put a fair amount of heat into that. I'm going to roll it into a ball. Well, can't even manage that, manage a sausage. Because I want to try and eliminate any creases in it, fold marks if you like, because I don't want to push it into the mould and then leave like a seam where it's been folded over like that. So my plan is make a ball, and when I've got a really nice dense homogeneous ball, which I think that is that, elongate it a little bit, flatten it and emboss that so I don't introduce folds. That's my plan anyway, and I still don't know if I've got enough, so this may be quite interesting. Okay, so I made myself a sausage. My sausage is not quite as long as my mould, and in my head that's about right. So let's see what we can actually do with this thing. I don't want to move it around too much on the mould because again, the nature of the plaster is it's going to cover it in talc, and eventually nothing's gonna, I'm going to change the consistency of the material, if you know what I mean. But it's not going to be the neatest of things. Already I can tell I'm going to end up with a big flange on the top surface of the mould. Not going to be able to work it so neat where it goes into all those little crevices and be able to trim it off. That's not how this is going to work, at least not without me getting a perfect volume of this stuff from the beginning, and I quite simply haven't. I think when it's finished I'd be able to weigh it and then maybe have another attempt using the same weight of clay or moulding compound or Fimo or whatever you want to call it, and that might result in something a lot neater and easier to trim. What I've got here is a bit of tube, but I'm going to use effectively as a rolling pin. Just see how much definition we can get. Take a little bit of the excess. Right. Now, what I'm going to do is I've got a tin foil tray. I take this and flip it into the tin foil tray, and then see if I can lift the mould off. And I can. As you can see, that was our first XK8 replica. Looks like some minor cracking on this surface here, but we're going to go with this just to try it out. So this is going to go into an oven, and we'll see what happens. Only the finest ovens. Right, so here we go. And you put your tray into the oven at 110 for 30 minutes. You think we're going to get a good batch? Have I done my ingredients properly? Molly. 30 minutes later, we've got a solid XK8 badge fresh out of the oven. In terms of solid, it's a slightly flexible feel. It's kind of like very, very tough rubber. Now we're just trimming off some of the excess, and it's a reasonably sharp knife, so you can see there's a reasonable amount of effort involved in cutting it, but it cuts nicely.
Well, here's the finished Fimo badge. It's a long way from perfect, but good enough to be interesting as a technique, something I could try again. And I am going to give it a splash of paint just to see a little bit more about what it looks like. It's hard to tell in this sort of matte black standard finish, so by adding some paint I can see it better. If you're enjoying these series of movies on the badge saga, then great, please subscribe. But we've got loads more stuff on Tinkering in the Garage, XK8, T25 Jeep, NP300 Navara. Please join us. See you again soon on To The Garage.